Thank you, Crystal. Thank you. Thank you. I forgot my belt this morning. It's only happened twice in all my years of preaching. So I told the folks at the first service, hey, I forgot my belt. And the reason I did that is the last time I had 4 or 5 folks after each service come up and say, did you know you forgot your belt? Did you know you forgot your belt? So I told them, I know I forgot my belt. Well, after the service, there were 8 or 10 folks, guys, all their belts off, handing me their belts. So I picked out one that fit, got a borrowed belt this morning, and it was so nice and sweet of those guys to do that. And by the way, did I forget to mention I forgot my iPod too? Well, I was 10 years old, and my football hero, Johnny Unitas, had come to town with the Baltimore Colts to play that evening the first exhibition game of the season. My hero was coming to town. My mother said, I just read in the newspaper where the Colts are staying at the Ramada Inn down by the airport. Would you like to drive down and see if we can see a few? Boy, would I? And driving down, my biggest thought was, boy, if I could just meet Johnny Unitas. If I could just meet Johnny Unitas. I mean, the other guys are great and all, but this is Johnny Unitas. Kind of like Zacchaeus in that sycamore tree, If I could just see Jesus, if I could just see Jesus, if I could just see Jesus. Well, we parked the car, and lo and behold, if the restaurant door opens, and out walks Johnny Unitas. And he sees us by the sycamore tree. I'm in the tree, looking. And he walks over, and I roll down the window, and now I'm talking with Johnny Unitas. It's one of the most amazing moments of my life. See, only 8 months earlier, Johnny Unitas had led the Colts to victory over the New York Giants in the greatest game ever played. That's what it's known as the Colts won in overtime in the snow up in Giant Stadium. And now to think that Johnny Unitas is actually talking to me. You going to the game tonight? He asked. Am I going to the game tonight? My father's got his tickets on the 45-yard line. Am I going to the game tonight? Well, it was the first exhibition game of the season. It was Dallas's first game ever because it was a brand new team. And it was kind of a sloppy game. John only played the first quarter. And near the end of the game, the Cowboys were winning 10-7, and the unthinkable was happening. My hero's team was about to lose. And I was shattered. When out of the blue, they send Johnny U back in. And here's what I remember. I remember a 15-yard pass to number 24, Lenny Moore. And then I remember a handoff to running back L.G. Dupree, number 45. We all called him Long Gone, CLG. And he's got the ball, handoff, he's through the line, he's past the linebackers, he's into the secondary, and I'm standing up just screaming at the top of my voice, go, Long John, go, go, go. Go, Long Gone. And he made a touchdown. Colts win 14-10. It's one of the greatest days of my life. And now he's standing here talking to me. He's not just at the window, we're talking. And we're so close, I can smell his breath. And I'm thinking, oh, that's what the breath of a winter smells like. See? This was Johnny Unitas. I had just opened moments before my first pack of football cards for the season, and Johnny's football card was in it. And I said to Johnny U, that's what all his friends call him, I said, Johnny, I've got your football card. He said, really? He said, I had a big gash on my nose. When they took the picture, I had my helmet crunched there. He said, I haven't seen the card yet. Can I see it? I hand him the card. There's the card right there. It's the one I gave to him. If you look closely, there's a big gash across his nose, big scar there that's healing. I had his card. I didn't save any number 44 Long Gone to Praise football cards. I didn't save any number 24 Lenny Moore cards. But I sure saved a lot of John Unitas cards. And there were a lot of Colts that I love, but I didn't save any Gino Marchetti's or Raymond Berry's or Jim Parker's or Big Daddy Lipscomb's or Bruce Nutter's. He was one of my favorites. But I sure saved a lot of Johnny Unitas cards. Over the years, I've not saved a single Peyton Manning, not one Troy Aikman, no Tony Romo's, no Tom Brady's. But I've sure got a lot of Johnny Unitas cards. I could hardly wait to get home, tell my buddies. Tell Tom Gray and Bruce and Steve and Mike Everett. And I get home, and none of them are home. And I'm going from house to house. And the only guy I could find home was Bill Austin. And I didn't even like him. But man, I'm telling Bill Austin all about Johnny Unitas. It's the most amazing day of my life. Some of us had the heroes like this. Oh, to meet Johnny Unitas for a 10-year-old boy. You know, there are a lot of people who'd like to meet God like that. Isn't that true? How many of you have said, if I could just sit down and have a little chat with Jesus? How many of you have said that to yourself? Boy, have I got a lot of questions I'd like to ask him. You know, there's some of you who's sitting here and you don't even believe in Jesus. I mean, as the Son of God. You believe he existed, but the stories about him. And some of you are thinking, you know, if it were really true, if it were really true. Some of you this morning may not even believe in God. You know, if I could just meet him, then I'd believe him. If he'd do a miracle for me, then I'd believe in him, then I'd know him. Remember the first moment, my first encounter with Jesus. It was one of those indelible marker moments for life. I was 7, and I wasn't searching for him, because I'm speaking to some of you this morning, and you're searching for him. It was kind of like he found me, he tapped me on the shoulder. And over the next several hours, I had an encounter with Jesus Christ that changed everything. I didn't realize it when I was 7, but you know, the framework of my life was locked in forever. The paradigm that came into place, the value judgment, the decisions, the choices I would make on that day were locked into place. I had a framework by which to live my life. It's kind of like you think about the reasons for skeletons. Think about it. You know, skeletons look differently because they support different types of creatures. Like here's a dog skull. I'm not the best in the world at this. Here's the dog skeleton. Okay. That's good. That's what I've done this morning. And you know what a skeleton does? It's where you hang the meat. See? And a dog looks like a dog because a dog has a dog skeleton, which carries the meat. Elephants, big elephants, all right? Big old elephant. Got these big legs. That's an elephant, okay? And what's inside of that thing? A skeleton, see? Gives it support. It looks like an elephant because it's got support. Now, Jesus has a design for each of us. The problem is, because of what the Bible talks about as being sin or our mistakes or what other folks do to us, most of us have a skeleton which is all messed up. It's kind of like a blob. And you know, a lot of folks go through life like they've got a blob, don't they? It's like, you know, running the bases in baseball, and there's a lot of folks who haven't even gotten to first base. And see, blobs don't run bases very well, do they? Some folks haven't even gotten to first base. And you know, you look at that thing and you go, what in the world is what? What in the world is that life? Look at the mess they've made of things. For example, Jesus comes along and he says, here's what I want to do. I want to give you abundant life. And here's what that means in relation to this. It's like here's the abundant life skeleton. See? See the difference between this one? And it's like God's building the flesh on the skeleton. He's now given us the framework, the paradigm for an abundant life. And I'm speaking to some of you this morning. You'd love to have an abundant life. You'd love to believe this is real. Because you're looking at your life and you know what? It's just not like you thought it was going to be, is it? It just didn't come out that way. And what Jesus says, in fact, if you look at this verse in John chapter 10, verses 9 and 10, here's what he says. He says, I'm going to declare my intention. I'm the gate. Whoever enters through me can be saved. And he'll come in and he'll go out and he'll find pasture. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I have come to give you life and life to the fullest. It's 2 words in Greek, literally, abundant life. That's what I've come to give you. Some of you this morning don't even believe in God, but you'd like to believe that there's a God who has a plan for your life. Some of you believe, well, there's a God, but he could never be interested in me, and yet you realize you're going to come to see, oh yeah, he can be interested in you. And he has a plan. He wants to give you a structure, a framework. It's called abundant life, which is designed to run the bases back to home plate. That's his design. So I want to pick out a few examples of what abundant life might look like. That some of us might experience Jesus this morning. That'd be a special thing, wouldn't it? I know, for example, you go to the Bible and you look at the word amazed and the numerous times that people were amazed with Jesus, like people were amazed with his divine acceptance. They couldn't believe how accepting he was. 12 noon, sun's high in the sky, it's hot. Disciples have gone into town to buy food, and Jesus is sitting alone on this well when this woman comes up, and Jesus says to her in John chapter 4, "Would you give me a drink?" Blew her away. He's asking for a drink out of her cup. Blew her away. See, this was a rejected woman on several levels. She was rejected because men didn't speak with women, so that was out of place. She was rejected because she was a Samaritan and he was a Jew, and the Jews and Samaritans didn't talk because the Samaritans were the combination of some Jews who intermarried some Assyrians, and they were not full-blooded Jews, and the Jews hated them. And so she was kind of rejected in the wrong race. She was rejected because he was a teacher and she wasn't, and teachers didn't talk to women, especially what? Those with a sordid sex life, which was hers. Can I have a drink? You want a drink from me? Yeah, I want a drink out of your cup. See, this is a picture of someone who's terrifically rejected, and Jesus Christ is fully accepting. So he leads her along a little bit. They have a little chat, and he says to her, hey, why don't you go call your husband? She says, I don't have one. Now, why would she say that? She's ashamed. Remember I said it was 12 noon? You know why she was drawing water at 12 noon in the hot sun? The other women didn't draw water at noon in the hot sun. They drew water at 6 o'clock in the evening when the sun was cool. Why was she out there at 12 noon? Because the other women had ostracized her. They rejected her. See, Jesus said, you're right. You've had 5 husbands and you're living with a guy. Now imagine this. Some of you have been divorced. Did you feel rejected? Sure you did. Here's a man who says, I don't want you. That hurts. 5 times men had told her, I don't want you. And now she's living with a guy. And what's she wondering? Is he going to reject me too? He won't even marry her. Some of you felt like that. You know, rejection's an awful thing. Did you know that when you're rejected emotionally, it affects the same part of your brain that feels pain, physical pain? They've done some interesting studies. Here's one. I'm going to put 3 computer screens up here on the screen. See these 3 computers? That'll represent the screen. And one of them is being operated by a human. And this human is told that he's going to play catch on the computer with 2 other guys. Only these 2 other guys don't exist. And the computers are programmed to play a little game. They're all playing catch, but after a while, see, this guy throws the ball computer-wise to this guy, and they're all playing catch. And after a while, the computers are programmed to stop throwing the ball to this guy. And they're just playing catch back and forth, and this guy's left out completely. And you know what? They measure his brain scan. He is just as hurt emotionally as he would be hurt physically if somebody was sticking a pin in him. Because this hurts. And some of you know it hurts. Let's face it. Being rejected is an awful thing. And all of us, I know, have been rejected by people here and there. She says, well, yeah, I'll go get my husband. This is all very confusing. She says, if I could just talk to God. That's what she said. If I could just talk to God, we'd get all this straightened out. Some of you have said that. And he makes the most startling revelation when he says to her in verse 26, I that speak to you am he. She's been looking for God and she's talking to God. And the next verse, she left her water pans in the sink and runs into town, breaking all the rejection rules, to talk to these men about the man who told her everything she ever did. Now watch. We only have the highlights here. They had an hour's worth of conversation. He told me everything. He went through her life with her. And says, I love you anyway. Could you imagine there's a lot of stuff in her life that was a disaster? He went through it all and said, I love you anyway. And the result? She went into town to tell all her girlfriends. And she couldn't find those, so she told Bill Austin. See, all the guys. And what's the next verse? and the people of the town put their faith in Jesus. Wouldn't you have liked to have been there to see that? Could you imagine that if you had an encounter like that with the amazing Christ, it just might change your life forever? You know, I've learned over the years that Jesus is not too particular about the people that he deals with. He'll take the most down and out rejected folks and accept them and love them, because that's the heart of God. See, human love says things like this. Human love. I love you because I like what you are. Divine love says, I love you, I don't care what you are. Human love says, okay, I love you, I love you, I love you, I don't want you, I love this one. Divine love just kind of splatters love all over the place. It's kind of like taking that paintbrush, you paint the house, it's going to be blue wall inside you. Well, just for fun. You just load that thing up and you just sling her against the wall, and paint just covers the wall. And could you imagine? Well, I'm not sure I believe in God. Okay, that's fine. But just for fun, could you imagine being rejected? And Jesus has put his arms around you and he's accepting you. Could you imagine that? Wouldn't that be special? Jesus, you read the story, he also amazed people. The Bible says he amazed them with the comfort he brought to people in their pains. Now, his best friend Lazarus had died, and Jesus didn't make the funeral. In fact, he was 4 days late, and when he arrives 4 days late, they're all still weeping. In fact, the Bible says that many had come to Martha and Mary, Lazarus' sisters, to bring them comfort because Lazarus was dead. And in verse 32 of chapter 11, it says, when Mary and Martha reached where Jesus was, and Mary saw Jesus, she fell at his feet, and she was weeping. And when Jesus saw the Jews that had come with her also sorrowing and weeping, he was moved deeply in his heart. And all of a sudden, this simple little verse, and Jesus wept. Could you imagine? Well, what's God like? A lot of folks ask. Well, just take a look at Jesus. Could you imagine being there as Jesus wept? What would it look like to see Jesus weeping? I was chatting with a lady the other day. She lost her mother 8 months ago, and she's still weeping. What would it have been like to see those two sisters grieving, and to see all these town people who love Lazarus? They were close-knit, weeping. And all of a sudden, Jesus, in compassion, watching, he starts to weep. You think you could love a person like that? I'd sure love a person like that. I'd sure wish I'd been there. What does it do to your heart to realize? Now experience this. Encounter Jesus for a moment. Could you imagine Jesus putting his arms around you and weeping with you? That's his heart. And people loved him for it. You go through the Bible and see some encounters. You see some of the folks who called him amazing. There's amazing love. Anthony Campolo tells about a pastor friend of his who had made an agreement up in New York State where he pastored with a local undertaker to do the kind of funerals nobody else wanted. And on a Tuesday morning, the undertaker called and said, I have a man who died of AIDS. Funeral's tomorrow. I can't find anybody to do the funeral. So this pastor says, well, I'll be glad to do it. See, the reason a lot of folks didn't want to do the funeral is because the guy had AIDS, and because they knew that mostly gay guys were going to come to the funeral, and a lot of pastors just didn't want to fiddle with that, but this guy did. So he says, we gathered. I preached a few words. I said a few prayers, did my normal funeral stuff, and they all just stood there looking at the ground. Said nobody looked up. They just stood there like statues, kind of shell-shocked at their friend who died of AIDS. Funeral was over. We got in our cars. We followed the hearse to the graveside. They were on one side of the man's grave. I was on the other. I did my normal funeral stuff at the graveside. I said a few verses. I said a few prayers. I said the benediction. I dismissed the men, and nobody moved. There was an awkward silence. Finally, I said, well, can I do something else for you? And one of the gay men said, You know that 23rd Psalm? I haven't heard that 23rd Psalm in a long time. Do you think you could read us the 23rd Psalm? And so he read him Psalm 23. When he finished, another man said that, you know there's a verse in the Bible about the Holy Spirit blowing where he wants to go and landing on people. Do you think you could read us that verse? And so he read him about the Holy Spirit blowing where he lists and going where he wants and touching people's hearts. And when he finished, another guy said, I love that Bible verse about, death and life and all that stuff can't separate us from God's love. Would you read that one? So the pastor opened his Bible to Romans chapter 8. Neither life, nor death, nor angels, nor demons, nor the present, nor the past, nor things future, nor depth, nor height, nor any other creature can separate us from the love of Christ. And you think about those guys hungering, thirsting for God. And I have a lot of emotions with that. One is, it kind of breaks my heart because I realize that there are people out there who are hungering for God who won't feel comfortable in most churches. In fact, most gay people think that the Christian church despises them. 91% of all teenagers surveyed say that their most critical, most thought when they think of the Christian church is that they're against gay people. Now, I'm not making this a theological issue. We'll miss the point here if we do. See, some folks wouldn't touch them with a 10-foot pole, but Jesus will. And they're hungering for Jesus. And Jesus has his hands out. You're hurting, I'll comfort you. You're rejected, I accept you. Why? What's the Bible say? For God so loved the world, what? The world, that he gave his only begotten Son. What if you were standing there weeping and your life was an absolute disaster and you felt pain and rejection? What would it be like if you were to experience Jesus Christ reaching out and touching you? Well, I wish I'd seen this. You read about the folks who are amazed, and maybe this is what abundant looks like. Abundant life, accepting you when you're rejected, comforting you when you're hurting. How about, could abundant life look like supporting you when you're struggling? A lot of us struggle. You got cancer, says the doc. Wouldn't it be nice if you just knew Jesus was supporting you through that? You just lost your job. It's a big struggle. Jesus supporting you through that? That's what he did in the Bible. Remember that time the disciples were about to die in the boat? They were drowning. I'll just read you this story. It's a short one. Without warning, a furious storm came up on the lake. So the waves swept over the boat. Jesus was asleep. And the disciples woke him up and said, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. Of course, Luke tells us that one of the things they said was, don't you care that we're going to die? Of course he cares. He's not going to let them sink. And he gets up and he says, peace, be still to the wind of the waves. And it was all calm. And the men were what? What's the Bible say? They were amazed. And they wondered, who is this? That even he controls the nature. I think sometimes you don't even have to know who he is to be touched by who he is. Sometimes I think I don't have to stand up here and prove Jesus to anybody. Just what I need to do is just show them Jesus. And they can just see Jesus. They have an experience with Jesus. Could you imagine that you're going through some struggle now? At least half of us are. And some of you know this experience. You know what it's like. You've already encountered him. Well, you got whatever. And here's Jesus. He's holding you up. But some of you don't know that. And I'm speaking to some of you who would say, boy, I wish I had that. I wish Jesus would support me like that. Did you see the tremendous display of sportsmanship 2 weeks ago when Sarah Glusky from West Oregon University, playing girls softball, did something she'd never done in her whole softball career? Not in elementary school, not in junior high, not in middle school, not in high school, not even in college. Something she'd never done in a playoff game. She hit the ball over the fence for a home run. Her team went up 4-2, 2 runners on base. she was so excited. As she came to first base, she missed it. So she had to go back, of course, and touch it. And as she realized she missed first base, she planted her cleats to go back to first. And when she did, she tore all the ligaments in her left knee and fell screaming in the base path. She crawled back to first base. They turned to the umpire. You know, I used to umpire a few moons ago. And I was thinking this morning, I'm not sure I knew what that rule would be. What's the umpire thinking? Well, he says you got two choices. One choice and then another option. You got one choice. You crawl back to first base, and we'll call it a single, can't be a home run, and we'll get a pinch runner for you. The first base coach asked the umpire, well, can our teammates help her? He said, no, that's against the rules. She'll be called out. At which point, Mallory Holman, the opposing team first baseman, said to the umpire, well, is there any rule against us helping her? The umpire thought a minute. Well, why would you want to do that? But he said, no, I guess there's no rule against that. So Mallory and her shortstop friend, Liz, picked up Sarah. See the picture? And they carried her down to second base. And Mallory said, which knee's hurt? She said, her left. And you hold still. We'll put your right foot on second base. And they took her down to third base. And they leaned her over, and she put her right foot on third base. And they took her home, and she put her foot on home plate. And her team went on to beat Mallory's team 4-2 and advance in the playoffs. The opposing coach said, you know, in all my years of coaching, I've never seen an act of sportsmanship like that. And Mallory said, well, maybe it's not so much about winning or losing. This girl was in pain. She hit a home run. She deserved to circle the bases. Now, that's our condition. See, a lot of us haven't even gotten to first base. And we're lying there in the base path. Jesus says, my goal for you is abundant life. My intention is you get to hit a home run. But look at you. You're bummed out on your knee, laying there in the base path near first base. And Jesus says, tell you what, I'll carry you if you trust me. I'll pick you up, I'll carry you. See, I want you to have abundant life. I'll carry you around the bases if you'll just trust me. You know, why would you want to sit there and get a pinch runner when I can carry you? How many of you have ever heard the term, Christianity is just a crutch for the feeble-minded? You heard that before? Look at all those hands. And you know, I want to say to that, it's not a crutch. It's a stretcher. See, it's a stretcher. If somebody doesn't carry me around those bases, man, I'm not going to make it. Because if I'm laying there with my ligaments all torn, I don't care how much I try to pull, I can't get around the bases. Jesus says, I want the home run, and I'm going to carry you. And you know, there's some of you sitting here right now, and you'd give anything to believe in Jesus. You're so tired of being a life that's kind of like a messed up blob sitting there around first base. And you'd like to believe, you'd like to experience that there's a Jesus Christ who could come into your life and give you a skeleton, give you a paradigm, carry you around those bases. You can experience a whole new life. You know, the truth is, I don't cherish those Johnny Unitas cards anymore. But I sure keep multiple pictures of Jesus in my heart. I don't cherish those pictures anymore of Johnny U throwing those touchdown passes. But I have a lot of pictures in my heart of Jesus bringing abundant life and victory into people's lives. I don't cherish any longer those cards where Johnny's beating down the opposition. No, I like the pictures in my heart of Jesus who's encouraging and blessing and touching and accepting. I don't any longer look at those pictures of Johnny in his triumphant poses. See, I have in my heart these pictures of Jesus who's just loving and caring for the down and out. then maybe this morning you've experienced him. And as I've been sitting up here, standing up here talking, he's been touching you. Well, I don't believe. Yeah, well, just imagine. See, I'm not sure I really need to prove Jesus to you. I think all I need to do is show him to you. See, I don't want to be like Johnny Unitas anymore. He's a great guy, but I want to be like Jesus. That's what I want. You know, Jesus said, blessed are those who see and believe, but blessed even more are those who have not seen and believe. There are a lot of us this morning, I'll say it very simply. You know, you've thought about this for years, and I'm going to say it's time to make your decision to follow Jesus. You want to do it. You've been thinking about it. We're going to do something we don't always do on Sundays, but this seemed appropriate. In a minute, Larry's going to come and lead us. We're going to sing, and I'm going to invite you. I'll be standing here at the front. I want you to come down and say, I want to give my life to Jesus. We'll have pastors here to pray with you. And it's your day. You don't need to put it off any longer. He's touched your life. So, may we stand together very simply. Larry's going to lead us as we sing. And Jesus, I think, is saying to us, today is the day. You come meet me right here at the front. Today's the day. You've thought about it for long. You come right now while we sing.